You're listening to Transformational Thinkers with Sara Sheehan, the global podcast where growth-minded CEOs and executive leaders get real-world strategies on business transformation, talent development, and mastering change management. Each episode brings actionable lessons, candid conversations with C-level innovators, and human capital strategies from around the world. If you're ready to scale, optimize your organization, and lead breakthrough change, you're in the right place. Let's unlock enterprise growth and success together. Hi there. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Balki Kodarapu, a fractional CTO who has seen it all when it comes to growing tech startups. From chaotic beginnings to multi-million-dollar success stories, we're talking no-nonsense strategies for building teams, scaling smarter, and how Gen AI is giving engineers real superpowers. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, and I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Let's jump right in. As a fractional CTO who guides multiple startups and scale-ups, how do you balance providing high-impact technology strategy with the realities of limited time and resources without sacrificing innovation or long-term vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I've worked with more startups than scale-ups or even larger companies. So 90% of the time, if you can imagine, startups need the push to move faster more than the strategy, actually. So there's a caveat there, but in most cases, I tend to, or I need to push the teams to move faster with limited resources, and it's less about the technology strategy. It may be staggering for some founders or even technology teams when they hear that, but that's the ground reality in almost every startup scenario. So that said, there is a balance. That's a very balancing act there. It's a balance between moving very fast with very little resources, but directionally, like to know that we're in the right direction. So what I do to make sure we are moving in the right direction, product and technology wise, is within the first 30 days of starting my tenure, I first gather the realities of the organization. And in almost 100% of the cases, they do not have a direction. And by direction, I mean a cohesive, written down engineering roadmap. They usually, the CEO or the CPO will have a product roadmap, whether it's right or wrong. They'll at least have something, who they want to target, how do they want to get there. But in almost every single case, there isn't an engineering roadmap. So that's my mandate almost when I go in. I'll work with the key players at the company and create a very simple but a scalable and adaptable engineering roadmap. So I usually, for most startups, a 3-year roadmap is an overkill, and a 3-month roadmap is also not good. So somewhere between 12 to 18 months roadmap divided up into quarterly regimen. I create a roadmap with the help of existing subject matter experts. That's usually either like the principal engineer or if they have engineering managers. Together, we'll spend 6 to 8 hours in multiple sessions, create an engineering roadmap that brings clarity and direction. And honestly, that's the single most powerful thing any engineering team needs to stay centered, to stay motivated, and to move in the right direction. Once that's done, though, it's maybe a monthly cadence of we look at it as a group on a monthly basis for 60 to 90 minutes and see if anything needs to change, if anything needs more love, if anything is moving in the right direction, and adjust it. And that's the only tending we need in terms of long-term roadmap / strategy. Honestly, everything else is in the moment. Let's move fast. Let's experiment. Let's build and ship as fast as we can.
And so your engineering roadmap Does that then, is that reflected like in a status report for your function?
In a way, so most startups, we meet pretty often as the leadership. So, for example, one company I'm helping, we meet approximately 2.5 times a week. The engineering leadership,
Right.
along with the founding team and the product team, and either myself or one of the stewards of that engineering roadmap will remember to bring it up on a regular cadence, and we'll be like, okay, here's the roadmap that we talked about, and we're on track or not. Do we need to spend any more time updating it or changing it? And that's generally sufficient, honestly. I'm surprised how effective that is because most engineers are not used to seeing a roadmap like that. So it actually
Planning.
brings them delight and motivation when we share something like that in an open forum.
That's great. And I'm assuming there's a corresponding budget that goes along with that roadmap as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So in most cases, the budget comes in the form of some space in the OKRs, objectives and key results. That's the methodology for goal tracking at most startups, and I recommend that, a lightweight version of that at most startups. And almost every company I help, either I introduce it or they'll already have a cadence of OKRs. And what we do is, let's say we have 5 objectives for the quarter. I make sure that one of them is aligned with that engineering roadmap. So anywhere from 10 to 20% of the time, we're spending on making progress towards that engineering roadmap, the investment. So that's how I budget the time and investment.
That's great. In terms of the actual scorecard that you're using, is there something, are there some words that you can put to define how the scorecard and the OKRs actually map up to your engineering roadmap?
Yeah, great question. I'm a big fan of incremental scorecards. So, for example, I'll share what it means and then maybe share one or two examples. So, the
Sure.
natural tendency for most good engineers is actually a binary. They'll be like, this quarter, I will remove this legacy piece of code, which is noble, but in my experience, it's usually not achievable when you make a goal into a binary. We tend to like do all the work at the end versus distributing that throughout the quarter. So what I push the engineers and myself is, it's more incremental. So here's an example. So this is a very specific example for a client I'm helping. They want to eliminate one of their vendors who's very expensive. So before I joined, they were very ambitious. They're like, we will eliminate this vendor in 2024. And sure enough, that did not happen because it did not incorporate the spirit of progress. So I pushed them to rewrite that goal and measurement so that in quarter one, we will move all of our smallest customers, so 20% of our customers, out of this vendor's critical path. So that's how I imagined, and then made them rewrite the goal so it's more incremental. So even by the end of that quarter, even if we haven't eliminated that vendor, we have made meaningful progress. So
That's a great example.
and it works like magic every single time.
That's a great example to show how it really works in a real situation. I'd like to shift into talking about building outcome-oriented teams. You have spoken about moving engineering teams from focusing on inputs and outputs to driving outcomes and impact. What practical steps do you take to instill this mindset within teams that may be stuck in traditional metrics or the fancy feature factory culture?
Great topic. It's one of my favorite topics about being an engineering leader that spectrum of input, output, outcome, impact is a very visual spectrum, and it resonates with both the business side, including the founders, as well as the engineering side. Here's a hot take though. Some organization may have to focus on input and output, right? So those are the organizations that haven't had a good engineering leader who has helped them even like get to the deliverability part of that. So by that I mean they haven't had that leadership to put best practices in place to deliver at a
Right.
good cadence. Also in another setting where there's a strong product leader or the founders themselves have a very strong outcome and impact. In other words, like they're moving really good in terms of taking the product we build as engineers and squeezing the value out of it, right? So if the product team and the founders are good at it, honestly, the engineering team could just focus on output. So those are the two scenarios where engineering team is fine just by focusing on output. In my experience, it's not the case though. The good news is most teams that by the time I entered the picture, most teams are doing pretty well with output and input. So in the modern era, they've gotten good at the deliverability part of it. But honestly, the outcome and impact, there's much to be desired from both the founders and the product teams. So that's where I roll up my sleeves, even though it's not my job, honestly, that I do have to like enter that picture and remind the founders like, okay, we need to focus on outcome and impact. So all of that said, when that is the need of the hour, some of the simple ways, practical ways to do that is I'll give you like 3 different things and we can unpack each one of those. So the first thing is I recommend the founders to do a regular segment during their all hands where they share the wins and losses from the field. So
Perfect.
take 10 minutes during the all hands to share how the product is making an impact on the market. You know, the result, as you can see, is the motivation and inspiration for engineers, right? So their work has an impact.
Right.
The second thing I recommend either the engineering manager or the product manager is to, during their weekly cadence of their sprints, in one of the cadence meetings, to take what they delivered during the previous sprint and show the metrics on how those features are being used in the field.
Nice.
Even
that's
go
good.
one step further and link it to even that's impacting the bottom line. Like how is that impacting the revenue?
That's fantastic. Yes.
The third way, which is rare and not many engineers like, is usually like what I recommend is all hands, do it every other week. The 1 week do focus on the business side of things and sharing updates from the top down. The other week do it from bottom up, exclusively focused on engineers, showcasing what they've built and getting feedback from the business side of things.
That's so powerful.
Not many engineers like it, and they're not used to it. They'll find every excuse in the world to say it's not ready or other side will not enjoy. And I'm like, no, you're doing it. I'll help you do it.
How does it impact company culture when you initiate this?
It impacts in a very positive way. You know, there's resistance. There's
I would think so.
From the beginning, you know, surprisingly and funnily from the engineers. But they feel empowered and become the critical path, right? The second interesting way is in the beginning, the business side will act surprised or they'll throw a fit. Like, why didn't you tell me you're building this? This feature is not ready. Or because they forget that before they were operating in complete darkness. And when we actually share what we are building as engineers, they are caught by surprise, actually. But I think it's a good thing. In my experience, it's a good thing.
I think it's a really good thing.
Here's your chance to provide feedback. Imagine what happened before. You were operating in the dark. this is 10 times better, if not 100 times better. You know what's coming ahead of
Yes.
time versus just caught by surprise when something goes to production. So within like 3 or 4 weeks, it, things work themselves out and it becomes this beautiful cadence of present, get feedback, adjust. One thing I'm like non-negotiable on with this, I will not stop shipping though. Just because GTM you're angry and did not expect, I'm like, I'm going to ship this to production. We'll put this behind a feature flag. What it means is it will not be available to every single customer. We'll open it up
Sure.
to the best friends, our well-wisher customers, and then
Sure.
iterate. But I'm not going to stop shipping this just because you're upset and don't know about it. But I'll take the feedback, and in the next iteration, we'll incorporate your feedback before we release it to the rest of the customer base.
That is a wonderful and agile way to constantly incorporate feedback so that you're improving the product at every turn.
Without stop shipping. So I want to add that.
I love it. I think more companies need to have a bottoms up opportunity to share regularly.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I've had 100% success doing this.
That's very impressive. I think you're definitely shaping a new best practice. I really do. Let's talk a little bit about navigating growth and change. For software as a service and Gen AI startups, many face relentless pressure to scale quickly without burning out budgets or teams. What's the most underappreciated lever for sustainable growth you've discovered in your advisory work with these companies?
Yeah, it's an understatement that there's relentless pressure on engineering. So, just for context, you know this already, but I want to share. For 10 plus years, it was the golden age of engineers. So, the engineers were in so much demand. There was a disconnect between demand and supply in favor of engineers. But in the last 2 years, it changed dramatically, right? So, engineers and engineering leaders it's an humbling phase right now because there's more supply and less demand. Part of that is
Really?
part of that is because several things have collided, and one of them is the what I call the the zero interest rate policy. Because of that, the funding has dried up for startups, which means there's less demand for engineers. The second thing is also the advent of Gen AI tools, along with many white collar fields in engineering and software development, has become, at least in perception, that engineering skill set has become a commodity. It's another topic for another podcast. I only partially agree, but at least there's perception. We have to deal with the perception. So all of that said, though, the single important lever is focus. It was the focus before. It's even more important today. The focus, right? So both for engineers as well as the founders, I use the word focus more often than they want to hear. The founders want to go after every single segment. To your point earlier, feature factory, right? So the founder's natural tendency is to turn engineering team into a feature factory, and I discourage them heavily that please do not do that. One of the best things we can do with engineers is to keep them quiet, like not actually fling code at our customers. Stay focused. And the same thing same thing applies from the engineering side as well. They'll want to do every single thing they come across, and just focus on what's needed right now, with your head in like what will happen in the next 3 to 6 months. So in practice, how it looks is put all of your energy, 80% of your energy during the sprint cycle on what is needed to win the customers over, but 20% of your focus on how how we want to grow over the next 3 to 6 months, or in some cases in a more advanced company, maybe 12 to 18 months, right? So that's how focus looks like for engineering teams. You don't need to lose sleep over how will we survive when we get to 10x or 100x our customer base.
Sure. And with the market the way it's accelerating so much, that makes a ton of sense because you're not choosing an unreasonable amount of time where the required technology is going to completely change. Yeah. So that's very, very smart. What does a well-architected software as a service team organization look like at 10 million annual revenue versus 50 million annual recurring revenue?
Again, I have a hot take on that. So I believe the difference between a 500,000 ARR versus even a million ARR versus a 10 million ARR, it's much more dramatic compared to the difference between 10 million ARR and 50 million ARR. And I'll share some of my insights and experiences there. So at 500K ARR, you're doing everything possible to survive, right? So it's usually like one or two engineers like doing suboptimal things, and that's the need of the hour to survive and get to the first stage of funding. But when we get to 10 million, the cards on the table have changed a little bit. You're past the survival stage. You have some predictable sources of revenue and customers, so you should not be slinging everything, right? So in my experience, 90% of the people who are good at that 500K pre 1 million ARR are not the best fit for 10 million ARR. It's super unfortunate.
Agreed.
But it is the reality.
Agreed. I understand that completely. And the same would be true for the 50 million.
Yeah, from 10 million to 50 million, I've seen some good level-headed people survive that phase, especially like because time is on your side at that phase, right? Time, and there's also money. By 10 million ARR, you have high probability that you could raise money, especially with startups, and that gives us some runway to think a bit more long term. During our previous conversation, we talked about how we focus 80% of our energy in the sprint versus the more long term. And when you reach that 10 million ARR and you're likely your Series A funding, you can take a breather and think more. Maybe that could shift to 60% on present day and 40% on the future, how we will scale in the next 12 to 36 months, right? So
a more strategic conversation.
What would be different is, in most cases, between that 5 to 10 million ARR, even as a head of engineering, I'm in the weeds pretty much, right? So I'm like on call pretty much. Yeah.
Understood. I mean, this is tough. 10 million, even though it sounds like a great number for a company, it is quite small.
Yeah. There's still a lot of things changing. Competitors, suddenly you get noticed by competitors, and then they're eager to chomp at the bit and take your market share. From an engineering perspective, though, there's one thing that changes quite a bit, which is the support system we need in terms of mid-level managers, right? So the size of the team is considerable. Like at 10 million, the average size today I see is anywhere from 25 to 50 people in engineering. And as we scale to 50 million, that might double or triple, which means we need strong mid-level managers who think about coaching and supporting the individual engineers. So usually I groom them from within. But I also bring outside engineering managers who have experience, right? So it's a balance. Here's a example where one company wanted to celebrate their internal folks and wholesale promoted like 5 very good engineers into engineering managers, and I would not recommend that for organizations. And it's a little bit of a counterintuitive to not celebrate our internal engineers because they've not seen outside world. They tend to be more myopic. I usually
Don't have the
experience
experience.
and the context of at least two or more companies. I'm there to coach them, but I'm one person, and so what I try to do is, yes, definitely celebrate the internal engineers, and especially if they have a good selfless mindset, because that's what it takes for an engineering manager to be successful. But also
Right.
supplement that by bringing some outside talent who have been in the trenches a couple times, so they can coach the newly minted engineering managers from the inside.
And so that is helpful that you are in a fractional CTO role, because I'm sure you have a lot of opportunity to bring other people in your network into an opportunity that might have specific skills and experiences that can make a huge impact for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So I've, over the years, both organically and as well as intentionally, curated a great set of both senior engineers and engineering managers. So I intentionally stay in touch with them and see how they're doing in their career, if they're looking for a role, and then almost naturally I bring them over to my current gigs, and it's a win-win-win, both for the
That's
company,
a
for
huge
me, and for
thing.
those individuals.
That's right. And it helps the client that you're working with. It helps them get the right skills and experience so that you can absolutely achieve your goals and in your roadmap.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are there any special comments that you want to make about hiring or reshuffling resources when you're working with an organization that's going through that fast scale up process?
Yeah. I mean, I'll maybe speak in the modern day world of Gen AI powered software engineers, right? So I have some modern controversial thoughts. So, for example, two unique things that I recommend to my clients is, one, do a trial based hiring. So again, a paid trial.
Nice.
I'll qualify that with trial, right? So because some companies take advantage of people's time and the desperation, so they'll be like, "Oh yeah, spend 20 hours with us doing a trial, but unpaid." So I don't endorse that. I only support a trial when it's paid. One of the
Okay.
I discovered and successfully implemented this at a fast paced company about 5 years ago. And ever since, I've been recommending that to founders. And again, I only support it if the founders are willing to make it a paid trial.
Okay.
So how that would look like is either me or one of the engineering managers would do a thorough 90-minute interview looking at three angles. One, their technical skills; two, their soft skills and communication skills; and three, their cultural alignment with where the company is. So it's divided into three phases, and we, in a 90-minute interview, and if we believe that they're a strong fit at that point, we'll invite them for approximately anywhere from 10 to 20 hour paid trial, and we open up the kimono of our internal operations, give them pretty much unprecedented access to all our IP, our ways of working,
Nice.
and they engage in a small to medium sized project with the team they'll be joining, and it's been like an eye opening experience. And
That's so great. That is so great. I wish more people would do that.
yeah,
It doesn't even have to be 40 hours, but having a period of time really gives you an indication of what someone can do.
exactly, yeah. And many times we're surprised. Somebody who is quiet during the interview tend to perform really well when they have the time and space to work on a project in a focused manner. Or sometimes somebody who looks really good on paper fail miserably when it comes to reality, right? So we see candidates from both angles. There is one question that comes up often when we do a trial: is this equitable, right? So for example, somebody who's already in a job and is a caretaker, could they do it? And I personally think this is a better way of approaching it. And that's how like we design this. So two ways I I support this is one, it's a paid trial. So it's actually generating a small amount of like, it's not life changing, but they're actually getting the money, even though they're working
Mm-hmm.
extra hours. We also schedule it in a way that's flexible for let's say working moms, right? So
Nice.
they could do it on a weekend or a
Perfect.
weekday or however they want. We schedule it
That's nice.
over a 7-day period that coincides with when it's ideal for them.
That's great. That is a powerful way to let someone test out if they
Exactly.
like you and vice versa. You can really assess the relationship with a situation like that.
I do want to pitch another angle to this as well, which is the how to do interviews in the modern AI powered engineering, right? So I
Okay.
was one of the first in the industry to say people should be able to use the AI tools while during the interview, right? So it aligns well with this trial base. So the most common way to do technical interviews is to put the candidate on the spot. They cannot use any tools, they cannot look up resources, but honestly that's not how they work in the real world, right? So what I encourage teams is to give them the opportunity and the tools that they'll use
Mm-hmm.
in real time,
Mm-hmm.
and test with the help of those tools how do they operate. I'm happy to unpack
Mm-hmm.
if you have any questions on that. So
Get a tiny bit more specific about what you're saying, what that means for the interviewee. So they are visibly engaged in the conversation via a camera, correct?
exactly, they're doing that, and also they can use any tools they want. And even better, we provide the tools where, I don't know if you came across tools like Cursor or GitHub Copilot, etc. So though they're
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
very modern tools people are using, and they're like, I call them giving superpowers, superhuman powers to individuals. So
For
many
sure.
purist technologists will say you should not use those tools during the interview because you don't get to see the technical skills. But I beg to differ. If that's how we are working day to day, why not give them the tools to the
Why
interviewee as
not?
well? But adapt your rubric. How do we measure the performance accordingly, right? So
Mm-hmm,
and some of the ways we look at this goes back to the outcomes instead of input, like
mm-hmm,
instead of looking at are they really good at the syntax and logic, shift that to are they producing the feature in a way that is consumable by the customer. So it's a mental shift for the
mm-hmm.
panel to change from like the nuances and minutia of the syntax to by the end of that 60 minutes or 90 minutes, did the candidate produce a feature that is really consumable by the customer.
Interesting. That is a fascinating view of modern interviewing that honestly I haven't really thought about. And I could see it transforming the quality of your hiring.
Exactly. And paired with the trial experience, I feel like that paints a very full picture of the candidate's capabilities and match in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I'd love to transition into adapting across domains. Your experience is so interesting because it spans healthcare, AI, and enterprise software as a service. What patterns or principles from one industry have you successfully applied to another? And what surprises you most when guiding transformation in new domains?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in seemingly different domains, but there's a common thread in a way. So about 50% of my career, I worked in payments and banking. The remaining 50% has been distributed across e-commerce, customer success, products, and healthcare. The common thread is
That's a big span.
yes. The common thread though is compliance and security, which is common across
Sure.
banking, payments, and healthcare.
Very
Yeah,
important.
it's a make or break deal. And another common thread on top of that compliance is, in spite of that seemingly friction, many people see it as a friction that you have to sacrifice everything else in pursuit of security and compliance. Again, I respectfully disagree. What I've built as a specialty is how to move fast, even despite the burden of compliance and security, right? So that's what I've built my whole career and specialization doing that, whether it's startups, scale up, or an enterprise company. Some of the best practices I built, we have already covered many of them. How to move fast, how to build for today while not losing the eye on the future. And one thing we did not touch on so far is my foundational pillars of engineering excellence. And I'll quickly name those pillars, and then we can unpack those if that's interesting to your audience. So I usually focus on 4 pillars. The 5th pillar, we can see it as a pillar, or the foundation itself is the security and compliance. And those 4 pillars are a modular architecture, highly testable automated testing framework, pipeline where we can reliably deliver our product into production, and the 4th pillar is observability. So when we do push something to production fast, if something goes wrong, we know sooner than the customer, right? So I don't want mud on the face for the customer to tell me when something goes wrong. We know it sooner than the customer. So that's observability.
That's nice.
So what I do, no matter what domain I go in, is to instill this culture and mindset both among the engineers as well as the business side, that in fact, I have like a grading assessment for each pillar. I grade on like A, B, C, D, E.
That's
and then
great.
Tell them so we can focus on the right things. It doesn't have to be the grand reveal is you don't need to score an A+ on all of these. In fact, you're an A+. You have over invested in these pillars. So I'm like, okay,
I get
if
that.
it's a B on one of the pillars, that's just fine. We will get it to A or A+ over time as needed. So
I would imagine this increases your key business stakeholders' trust in you.
Absolutely, yeah.
When they see that you're using this and you're communicating based on grades or achievement results, if you will, I would think that is a winning combination.
Absolutely, yeah. Not just in me. I'll take the win as a fractional CTO, but also the team and the investment in like the team. Engineers tend to use the word tech debt a lot, and it's a very tired phrase when they just use tech debt without context. So these 4 pillars and the grades actually put a very vivid picture of what that tech debt means and where we need to invest in. So it increases the credibility and 100% builds that confidence from the founders to, yes, we need to invest in this specific area because we scored a D where we should at least be a B.
Right. You definitely demonstrated that you're using best practices across different industries with great ease. It's very clear that you're using the best practices widely.
I appreciate that.
You have filed patents in machine language and NLP and built customer-facing AI tools. What's your advice to early stage founders building with Gen AI today?
Yeah, I mean, balance and objectivity matter more than ever. So it's very easy to get carried away by all the FOMO out there. So, all these companies saying that, they can build $1 billion tech startup with one engineer, etc. it's
No.
incredibly distracting, and
Mm-hmm.
I will say it's not accurate either, right? So
Not feasible.
yeah, flash news, like it may be possible, but for not everybody, right? So again, like I'm
Right.
specializing in helping health tech companies. They need to
Mm-hmm.
be good citizens. They can't just like dump.
Most
Yeah, they need to be
definitely.
good citizens. They need to be stewards of the highly confidential information that they keep track of their customers, and they
Mm-hmm.
cannot just like willy nilly do whatever, like the latest AI tool, and use that on top of this highly confidential private information. So which means naturally you're slowing down. It's a humbling factor for them to like think about speed versus security, right? So that's one angle.
Sure.
All of that said, Gen AI is here to stay, and it's a force multiplier for many SaaS companies. So I
Mm-hmm.
what I do with founders is help them look this Gen AI from four different angles. One is how we use Gen AI to provide superpowers to our existing engineering teams. And again, I start by how we can apply and use these Gen AI tools to improve our engineering excellence stance, the four pillars we just talked about. There's a great
Mm-hmm.
opportunity at every company to inject Gen AI tools to improve the grades on each of those pillars pretty quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one area I to give
Mm-hmm.
superpowers to our engineers using Gen AI. So
I
that's one
love that.
area. The second area is if you're not using Gen AI in your product itself, many companies have not thought through like how they can gracefully
Sure.
inject Gen AI into the products. I help them as well. Usually it's again like the founders are pretty good at it, and if not, the head of their product is also thinking about it. But I also can bring quite a bit of knowledge from the field how they can use in the
Sure.
product itself.
Like the practical
Exactly.
side.
And the third way
Yes.
is to level up the entire company. For example, in the past, the GTM side would nervously wait for the engineers to help them build some internal tools.
Mm-hmm.
But with Gen AI tools, that power is unlocked. So there's no reason for GTM folks to build their own simple tools on their own, right? So just bringing that awareness and the confidence for the GTM folks to build their own tools, but get the support instead of waiting, they could build their own and
Sure.
just run it by the engineers to see like, okay, could we do this better?
That is very exciting because then it creates learning within the organization.
Exactly. Yeah. Just the mindset itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we covered the four areas: the injecting AI into the product itself, and providing superpowers to our engineers, and then
Mm-hmm.
leveling up the entire organization so they can self-serve and build more
Yes.
internal tools. So within the giving superpowers to engineers, I have like a two distinct ways. One is to improve the grades of the engineering excellence pillars, and
Nice.
and then within that there's a second area where engineers themselves are becoming like highly productive. So before we talked about the previous tools, they had to go and search or ask others for help in writing their code. But with the modern tool chain, they can be
It's just there.
3x to 10x more powerful, and they can be pretty much superheroes in their own way. Like the knowledge base is right at their fingertips, right? So making those
Much faster.
exactly.
And so they're able to actually be more creative and solve bigger problems.
Exactly. And more independently, right? So there's a seismic shift in like before we had to have like four specialists to work on a feature. Now
Right.
I'm willing to bet and see it in practice that a single developer could be multifaceted and could build a feature and ship it independently, right? So as you can imagine, that
Mm.
unlocks so much capability for both the team as well as the company when a single engineer could
Mm-hmm.
could ship a feature on their even a most complex feature on their own and put it in front of the customer.
That's remarkable. Let's talk a little bit about your personal leadership philosophy. Engineering leadership often involves tough decisions and ambiguity. Can you share a story about a turning point, maybe a failure or an unexpected challenge that significantly shaped your approach to technical and team leadership?
Yeah. So I didn't go too deep in my career, but I'll like maybe spend 30 seconds. So for the first 10 years, I had the luxury of staying at the same company, and I got carried away towards the end of it. Like I steadily grew in my career. I knew everything about our product and people and technology at the back of my hand. So when I became a leader at that company, it was like I was on top of the world, like because I knew everything about everything, including the people.
That's great.
When I came out of that company, though, I I expected the same in the new setting, and it could
Right.
not be more different. It was more a complex product.
Right.
It's a very different domain, very different personalities, very different era.
Isn't it amazing how all those variables can
Exactly.
change so
Yep. And
quickly?
I took everything for granted and started like showing off. Like I was resting on my laurels from a very different setting, and I'm humble enough to admit I failed miserably.
But you learned very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that I wrote off that role. I was there for a year, but it was a traumatic experience. I only realized
Oh,
that like I had time to reflect on that experience when I came out. And the single biggest powerful discovery for me is no matter how much experience I have, building trust with the team is non-negotiable.
it's huge.
By the
That's
team, I mean the
huge.
people I'll be leading, right? So
That's
I
right.
put everything else aside, you know, building relationships with my peers, the founders. I actually like tell them, like, give me 45 to anywhere from 45 to 90 days where I'm single-mindedly focused on working and helping my team build trust with each other. And
That's
I
great.
focus just on that. And I have like a playbook on what all I do. Uh, we may not have time today. For example, even if I join a 100-person team as a CTO, I'll roll up my sleeves and write my code within the first week and ship that code and be on call for the first 30 days. And that's like the most humbling and the best experience to work alongside the engineers and build empathy for them. And without fail, that builds mutual trust for each other.
For sure, because they see you're
Yes,
doing it.
exactly. Yeah.
So let's chat a little bit about the future of fractional technology leadership and where you see it going. With the rise of fractional executives in technology, what key trends or risks should founders think about before engaging a fractional CTO? And how will this role continue evolving in the years ahead?
Yeah. I mean, fractional anything is becoming a norm right now, especially fractional CTO. I like to think I was at the beginning stages of this. I started about 18 months ago. Uh, Naturally, my career has evolved like to put me in the best position to be a fractional CTO. And I'll share some of the
Sure.
attributes of what helped me become a successful fractional CTO.
Perfect.
One is the the experience both as a individual contributor, as a software engineer, as well as a leader.
Yes.
So those two sides of the coin are crucial for a fractional CTO.
They're absolutely critical.
Yep. So when founders are hiring a fractional CTO, if they see one or more of the other, they should be careful. Like it must be almost close to 50-50 balance.
Balanced.
I mean, it could be 60-40, 40-60, etc. But it's very tempting to hire somebody who's super technical or very strategic. So that's one red flag or yellow flag that founders should look at, that the dance and the balance is critical for a fractional CTO. The second is the balance between the size and scale of the companies, right? So again, like
Mm-hmm.
I did it in reverse, but in the first half of my career, I worked at very large enterprises. And the second half, I
Sure.
worked for different stages of startups. So pretty much from like zero revenue to over like 500 million revenue. I worked at every stage of the company. So when I see the transition, it's like a very natural, like, oh, there it is. We are moving from 5 to
Mm-hmm.
10 million. That means I need to be aware of these five things.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
it's hard for somebody to go through that unless they had a very long and cherishing career. But as much as possible, look at the picture of, did this fractional CTO have a variety of experiences?
Mm-hmm. I can see how it would make a huge difference, because then you would be able to weigh in on so many different topics, like talking about things like application
Exactly.
rationalization, or looking at your architecture and getting strategic about what you need to do for the next growth stage. You really have to have those experiences to be able to lead those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a do or die situation in many cases, whether you underinvest or overinvest in architectural decisions. Usually it's overinvesting. So I'm like, let's stop here and like not think about what will happen in 5 years because our runway is 6 months.
Right, I understand. And so tell me, is there anything else that you would like to share today?
Yeah, I mean, this fractional CTO journey has been a blessing in disguise for me. I didn't expect it to be so much fun and successful for me.
That's wonderful.
I I would love to help more companies. I have some bandwidth to either be in a coaching mentorship position for engineering leaders and founders, or roll up my sleeves and be in the weeds, depending on what the companies need. I have a little bit of bandwidth, and any of your audience members want to have a conversation, I'm open. I can guarantee that even a 30-minute conversation would be game changing for you,
Highly
for your
beneficial.
audience.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn. I share 90%, maybe even 95% of my knowledge that I've acquired on LinkedIn. So you can take that
That's
and make
great.
it your own. But if you have any nuance and want to explore a very specific area that you need help with,
Mm-hmm.
you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. All my contact information is available there, and your audience can enjoy and appreciate. I write twice a week on LinkedIn. I write 2 posts, and they're very current context topics. So your audience will appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. I very much appreciate your time today, and I would love to introduce you to your best next client.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today. Here are 3 key takeaways for fellow leaders and growth-minded founders. Build and maintain clarity. Create a clear, actionable engineering roadmap, ideally 12 to 18 months, revisited monthly. This brings alignment and motivation, especially in high-growth, resource-constrained environments. Foster outcome-driven teams. Shift your engineering org from feature factory thinking to outcome and impact. Regularly celebrate real-world wins in all hands. Share user impact stats during sprints, and balance top-down with bottom-up knowledge sharing. This not only drives performance, but transforms team culture. Focus above all. In today's tough market, focus is the most underappreciated lever. Founders resist turning your team into a feature factory. Engineers, invest your energy where it matters most, delivering for customers right now, but with an eye on the next growth stage. From modern hiring, think paid flexible trials and Gen AI powered interviews, to cross-pollinating best practices across industries, there has never been a more exciting or demanding time to lead. Thank you so much for listening today. As always, subscribe and never miss an episode.